Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Daily Defender. Glad to be with everybody again. Glad you folks are with us and spending some time. Very, very warm welcome back to all of our current subscribers, and also a warm welcome to all the new viewers. If you like what you see and appreciate the channel, hit the like button, subscribe. Really appreciate all the subscribers, but of course, we'd like to see more and more subscriptions to the channel, so really appreciate that. Great comments as always. As you guys know, I love the comments. Had a great one recently from a CHP officer back in the day in the Smith & Wesson 4006 TSW video that I did. That was great to hear from him. Great comments. So please keep those coming. Today, I want to jump back into an H&K. This one also kind of goes back into this, late 80s, really 90s platform. This happens to be an HK USP in 40 cal or 40 Smith & Wesson full size. And the product has really this the HK USP and kind of its original derivative, the MK25 Mod Zero for SOCOM, has this legendary reputation for build quality, engineering, and this just durability. The torture tests that this pistol was put through were engineered to. And we'll get into that a little bit in the deep dive and talk a little bit about that. I'm really interested in your comments. So glad to have everybody here. Welcome back. And again, let's get into the deep dive on this HK USP full-size 40 Smith & Wesson. So as I just introduced, we want to take a deep dive on this HK USP 40 Smith & Wesson. And it's another one of these, almost where do you start? And I guess we've got to start with the history. The history on this pistol dates back into the 80s. So this is a late 80s type platform. The product itself, this USP 40 Smith & Wesson, was introduced in the early 90s, probably 92, 93-ish. Before I forget, the date code stamp on this particular firearm is from 1995. So it's a pretty early, in the grand scheme of things, considering this product is still made today, a 1995 vintage, if you will. Is pretty cool, I think. It goes back that far. But this product, again, was a child of, as we've talked about many times on this channel, believe it or not, the FBI Miami shootout in 1986, because that analysis, all of that, a lot of the time was spent on the cartridge. And the FBI determined at that time that the 9mm and 38 Special and things like that were not up to the task and felt that a new caliber needed to be designed. And we've gone through this and talked about it, I should say, on the channel with the 10mm and eventually the 40 Smith & Wesson. But the 40 Smith & Wesson was there, and it was really the latest and greatest, and law enforcement was going to it. There was no question of that. And HK didn't have a firearm for that. They were in the process of producing or creating, designing, what have you, the MK25 Mod Zero and 45 ACP for SOCOM. Very famous pistol. If you guys are into HKs, you certainly know it. Even if you're probably not into an HK, you know this very large 45 ACP firearm that HK made back in the 80s and 90s for SOCOM. Specifically, the Navy SEALs used it for a period of time. But there was a lot of design criteria and design and engineering criteria going on at that time. And then they realized, hey, I don't know if we quickly, but we definitely need to bring a product to market for law enforcement at 40 Smith & Wesson. So they took a lot of what they knew at the MK25 and designed it into this HK USP platform, and specifically designed for 40 Smith & Wesson, and was brought out in 40 Smith & Wesson first. 45 ACP came, and then 9mm. I don't remember which one was, second and third, but this product was designed as a 40 Smith & Wesson, basically for law enforcement. That's what they designed this pistol around. Now, the torture test or the design criteria that was put into this pistol probably harks back a lot to the military contract with the MK25. But, some of the things that they did with this firearm, the 40 USP specifically, was 20,000 plus rounds through this firearm with no breakage or major wear to it. They subjected it to insane temperatures and then had to shoot it. And again, no breakage or wear, mud tests, water tests, saltwater spray tests, intentionally squibbed round into the barrel and then shot again into the barrel, and just a drop test over drop test to ensure it was drop safe. All of that stuff kind of designed into this pistol. I'm probably going to do a video on it. It really asks the question, does anybody even build a pistol like this anymore? Does their design criteria even come close to that? I don't know the answer, but I think we're going to do a video on that, and then I'll love the comments. But so this is kind of our base, design, our start point with HK and this USP, and it really is what makes this pistol so cool. So that's kind of our design criteria. That's how it got here. That's kind of our lineage. I think I already mentioned the date code on this one. Yeah, it's 1995, so we kind of know the age of this firearm. Let's go ahead and do the walk around like we normally do. And of course, we've got a clear and safe firearm here. So we've got that. So walk around. First of all, it's a full-size firearm, obviously, and I've mentioned that. So this is not a small firearm. And maybe before I forget, let's do all the specs. It's almost a 29-ounce firearm without the magazine and not loaded. So this is it's still a carbon steel with a polymer frame, but this is still got a little bit of weight to it. But again, full-size firearm. 7.68 in length, 5.31 in height, and about 1.26 in width. Not a skinny firearm, but again, 40 Smith & Wesson full size. That's kind of our specs around it. 4.25-inch barrel, I should state, with the polyagonal rifling, which also HK felt was the way to go instead of your standard lands and grooves type of rifling. Our walk around, again, carbon steel slide. I should mention that again, back in the day, HK was calling out this exterior finish as a hostile environment nitride finish, I believe, if I remember. And there's no question about it. It's a very, very good finish on the firearm. There's no question about that. And because they knew their clientele and what these firearms were going to be put through. Is the finish, that much, advanced over what we have today? Probably not. But back in the day, they spent a lot of time and effort to making sure that they had a very, very good finish on this carbon steel slide. Machining itself is very cool, I think, right? I mean, first of all, the machining alone into the slide is just very well done. You can just see how well this has been made. And of course, there's the great HK USP stamp up front, and then 40 Smith & Wesson here denoting the caliber, your date code, some of your other stamps, and of course your serial number. Coming back, you've got full serrations here. Coming up over the top, again, as I said, not a slim firearm, but this is a full-size 40 Smith & Wesson. Coming onto this side of the slide, nothing here, and very, very clean in that regard. You can see how large and beefy this extractor is. Certainly, again, to this build quality, not an accident. Very, very large and beefy extractor. And then the barrel is stamped HK with the caliber and again with the serial number. So you have a slide and barrel matching serial number in that regard. Coming over the top, this gun would have been normally supplied with a 3-dot white sight, if I remember correctly. Whoever had this decided to go ahead and put these fiber optic, kind of almost a Novak style sight here, which is fine. I mean, they're just fine, but not original in that regard. Walking down, you can see we've got a full-size spurred hammer, and of course you'd have that on a full-size military duty type of weapon. And again, just some very nice machining. This is very large, kind of cool design, or block look front up. I think is very, very cool, very, very HK, right? Very neat. And we walk down onto the frame itself. As I mentioned, it's a polymer frame. Now, again, back in the day, I remember HK stating that they had a proprietary polymer material or design. I'm sure that's absolutely true. Is it, any much different or much better, I should say, maybe than the polymer frames of today. I don't know, probably not, just because of the advances in material and technology over the decades, but certainly extremely well built back in the day. Proprietary rail for the USPs. This is one of the negatives. There's a couple of negatives that people tend to comment about these HKs. One of them is the proprietary rail, which is true. It's German, and you got what you got, and there were one or two or whatever it was, lights or lasers that worked, and that's what you got. Metal, uh, slide lock, slide release, depending on your preference. Some people talk about this. I guess is the next criticism on the HKs. These large controls. They are big. I don't know if I would consider them large or obtrusive. They're certainly extremely functional. This one is metal. The decocker safety, I'll come back to that, is polymer. But just coming back onto the frame, you can tell we've got a very large trigger guard here, right? And of course, that's geared definitely towards their clientele that they thought would be wearing gloves. On this side of the frame, or underneath the frame, you've got more information. Once again, a serial number. So I really should state you've got a slide, frame, and barrel matching serial number. Very cool. You have the very classic H&K mag release here on the trigger guard. Again, potentially a bit of a knock on the HK. I don't find it at all. I find it very intuitive, very easy to use. I think most people do once they just use it for a little bit. No, it's not a button, but geez, it's right there. What do you, just a step over from where a button would be, and utilize your thumb and it works. So, it's just, I just don't see the concern or gripe over that. And then on this side, or I should say with the rest of the frame, you've got some stippling here. Not as aggressive as we'd see today, not like a skateboard or sandpaper type of feel. So that's a little smooth comparative to today. Very good checkering here on the front strap, and very good checkering on the back strap. Of course, no different grip modules, no different panels, no rear grip module changeouts. It's, again, you got what you got, right? This is built in that kind of era. And on this side of the frame, you've got another HK stamp information, patent, but otherwise very clean. You don't have the ambi safety on this particular one, and I'll come back to that. Just finishing off the frame, you've got a very large magwell here. Maybe not beveled by today's standards, but just a very large mouth opening. And of course, there's no issue at all with getting mags in and out. Again, very well designed. They do have these dimples in the frame, should you have had to have used that to be able to get to the mag. And I'll come back to the mag, but I want to come back to the really their variant, what they call the trigger variant or hammer variant or setup variant. I can't remember the exact words. There were basically 10 versions, well, supposedly 10, but number 8 was never used, so there's really 9. This one is a V1 variant. So explaining that, this particular firearm is a double action, single action firearm. We've talked a lot about that on the channel, so I won't kind of explain or go into that deeply, but double action, single action firearm. So part of that, though, is you can rack around and have the hammer in the rear configuration. And on this firearm, you can put it into a cocked and locked mode. So you can kind of run it like a 1911. You can also use it as a decocker and safely drop the hammer. And then once again, if you want, you can put the gun on safe. So a lot of capability, I guess, or a lot of features kind of packed into this little design here called the V1. And that's what that's all about. And you'll see different configurations. And HK went to the LEM trigger, which is a very, very good trigger as the product went on and all that. This is very, very classic. Double action, single action, variant 1. Very classic, kind of the way I actually like it. So that's the firearm itself. Magazines, you would have got 1, 2, 3, whatever it was. 13 round 40 cal. These are all polymer base plates. Nice HK USP stamp there. Nice touch. These are very vintage. These go back to the day when magazines were stamped when they had certain round capacities that were only restricted to law enforcement or government. That, of course, is since passed, and you'll find these in gun shops and pawn shops and all that kind of stuff, as long as your state today still is allowed, your state is allowed to have a higher round capacity. So very, very cool. Again, it kind of just harks back to all this history and lineage with this firearm and the law enforcement connection. So really cool there, but very, very well made magazines. Just very, very stout, well made, great stuff there. And again, we already kind of talked about, the magazine fitment and how well that works. I will say, just to give you a little bit, these guns would have come with the classic, I think very classic, gray HK USP boxes. They don't make these anymore. The guns don't come this way. If you buy an HK USP today, it'll come in the newer version black case. I don't know the years these were stopped. I used to know that. I don't remember it. Maybe I'll see if I can look that up when they stopped making these gray plastic cases. But they were very kind of cool and again, vintage, set up well, nice, slot here for your operator's manual and whatever other documentation. You would have had your spare magazine that would have come with the firearm, and then the firearm simply drops into the case in that regard. Very cool. I like it a lot. It, again, great lineage, great, going back into the 80s and 90s and how the Germans were doing cases in the firearm. I just love it. I think it's really cool. So that's the case that you would have got and still get, perhaps, if you buy a used one and the owner kept the case. How it shot. It shot very, very well. I really like HK USP pistols. One of my favorite platforms. For me personally, 9mm is just the pinnacle of this design. For me personally, everybody's mileage may vary. I love the fact that this was brought out when it was brought out in 40 Smith & Wesson, but the 9mm package for me is just, kind of rainbows and magic stuff. But this shot very, very well for a 40. HK also had what they called a recoil reducing system, which was kind of a double spring system, specifically trying to tame the 40 Smith & Wesson recoil. I think it does do a very good job. Is it the smoothest shooting 40 I've shot? No. Do I think that probably the all-metal SIGs like the 229 or 226 tame it even a little bit better with the weight and a full metal gun? For me, I say yes. But this is still a very, very well-made firearm. If you're looking for a full-size 40 Smith & Wesson and want something built to this level, this is hard to beat, and still have a polymer frame, so you're trying to strip some of that weight off instead of a full metal gun in a full size. Again, the negatives would also be cost, right? We didn't really talk about that, but HK has always been a premium brand and a premium product, and the price tag always came along with that. Of course, you see them trying to mitigate that now in their striker fired pistols and the P30 design, trying to bring that into at least closer into a mainstream price point. Obviously, buying a gun used is going to help with that, but HK's always been expensive. That's one of the knocks. In the USP, the proprietary rail, although again they've changed that now and they're more current designs. The larger controls, some people don't care for. Those are kind of the on the negative column. But I think, again, if you understand what this pistol is and what it was designed to do and why and how it was made, I think a lot of those negatives kind of just drift away or dilute away, and you have an extremely capable firearm. As I've said over and over, just very well made and very well engineered. So I hope you guys like that. I hope you guys got something out of that. I think that was really all the major points that I wanted to talk about on this HK USP 40 Smith & Wesson. And thanks again for the time, and we'll see you again very, very soon on the Daily Defender.